welcome to today's video. As you can see, I am reviewing the latest installment in the Conjuring universe. If you have seen any of my past videos, then you know the Conjuring universe is actually one of my top 10 horror franchises, despite the fact that the films are very hit and miss. There are some films I rage over and some films that I absolutely fawn over. You know, I never know what I'm gonna get. So I guess we'll just get into this review and figure out which way this film made me go. The Conjuring The Devil Made Me Do It, also known as The Conjuring 3, is a 2021 American supernatural horror film directed by Michael Chavez with a screenplay by David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick from a story by James Wan and Johnson McGoldrick. It's the sequel to 2016's The Conjuring 2 and the 8th installment in the Conjuring universe. In it, paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren take on one of the most sensational cases of their careers. A boy accused of murder, the suspect claims demonic possession as his defense, forcing the Warrens into a supernatural inquiry unlike anything they've ever seen before. Like I said, while this universe is full of hits or misses, I am genuinely a big fan of it. What James Wan built with The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2 was truly iconic. He not only introduced horror to a new audience, but he kind of brought it back to the glory of being scared out of our wits by a film and eager to see the next one, hoping for that same experience. Though sadly, the spin-offs did not yield the same results. With lockdown back in effect in Melbourne, I was devastated I wouldn't get to see the latest installment. I'd been avoiding the trailers like crazy, so I could go in as blind as possible and hopefully not ruin any good jump scares like what happened with The Nun. So boy was I relieved to see this released on digital so fast. I was bouncing and squealing with excitement. I got relaxed, turned off the lights and put the movie on, and for the first 15 to 20 minutes I was loving every minute of the film. The film had gone in a much darker direction than not just the previous Conjuring films, but honestly any of the films in the universe in general. It was being daring and taking risks, and I was here for it. The first 15 or so minutes go off with a bang as we witness a possession in full swing and the powers of an inhuman spirit raining hell down upon this poor family. We see an innocent child being terrorized internally, and it got my heart racing a bit. It was going for more over-the-top paranormal activity and violence than we'd seen before, and it was effective. The subtle glance of disembodied grotesque fingers followed by a violent onslaught from a possessed child had me reeling from several different and intense emotions in the span of a minute. During this time, we also see the film pay homage to The Exorcist, which I have to say I was not impressed with. Many horror films pay homage to ones that came before. It's always great as a horror fan seeing these moments integrated in any way where they feel organic, but you can see the tribute. This didn't feel like that. This felt like just flat out copying a moment from an iconic horror film when it had no place or impact in this film and was featuring a character who means absolutely nothing to the story. There are some moments in film history I feel you should not attempt to replicate, at least not unless you can 100% nail it, and this is one of those scenes, and it was not nailed. After this, I found myself quoting my favorite TV series, Charmed, as a poor David hides in his shower. I'm taken back to season 2, episode Chick Flick, where Piper says one of her most iconic lines, "I'm being stalked by psycho killers and I hide in the shower." Safe to say I was enjoying myself. Sadly, that's pretty much where my overwhelming love and admiration in the film ended. What followed was a convoluted mess not fitting of the Conjuring title. After seeing The Curse of La Llorona and seeing what Michael Chavez was able to do with his feature directorial debut, I felt excited to see what he could do in this film, and I think when he's doing his own thing and his own style, he rocks it. It's when he tries to mimic others he loses his way. While I can't speak for his short films, I really love the camera work in The Curse of La Llorona, specifically during the start of the film where we follow Anna throughout the house in a single shot. It was a great fluid shot that was so seamless and really captured their busy life. I feel this is going to be Chavez's signature move because he brought it back in this film, specifically as we follow Debbie around the house she works in, and I really love that. I love directors having a signature style and then putting it into their films because it becomes a thing where we can identify them as the director through simple camera work instead of having to check IMDb, and I think that's cool. The film also has great transition shots where the color palette and even time of day drastically shift in an instant, but through a great twist of the camera. This is often used to indicate Lorraine is having a vision or the scene is taking place in a character's mind and does not reflect reality at that current time. These moments were great and they further speak to Chavez's directing skills and make me feel they did trust the right man with the job despite a couple of moments, such as the Exorcist moments, which consisted not only of having the shot of the priest arriving but the numerous shots of contorted bodies, which I also feel were inspired by The Exorcist, and in this film were overused. We have a couple occasions where we see a creepy close-up of a scary hand or fingers, which is a technique used in The Conjuring 2, or several scenes where Vera Farmiga is overcome with a sense of fear as she slowly turns to look in the direction of something scary. She also does this one too many times, and this was a shot really effectively used in The Conjuring. I think they should have stuck to using fresh or different techniques instead of replicating camera techniques used in previous films or even other horror films, because for me it was making those camera moments feel stale, and because they were happening so often it became very repetitive and I was not happy, but not nearly as unhappy as I was with the plot. The plot outside of the opening of the film is quite terrible. I absolutely love that they were going for something darker and they kept saying they were trying to break away from the haunted house thing, which I get, but for the record, The Conjuring had haunted land and The Conjuring 2 wasn't a haunted house. It was really more just the one kid targeted because she used a Ouija board and the family were just bystanders. I mean, the demon attacked them when they stayed next door, just saying. Either way, I appreciate what they were going for. The problem is the core of the universe is the Conjuring films, and those films focus on real people and their stories and experiences. Lorraine Warren was involved with those films to a degree, so were some of the family members who had experienced these paranormal cases. Of course, the films had embellishments, it's cinema, but at their base level, they were the tellings of real stories and real lives impacted by horror, and that's what made them so great. That outside these embellishments, they tried to stay as close to the real story as they could, because if they moved too far away from it, as made clear with the spin-offs, the stories just become outlandish and ridiculous. This film is outlandish and ridiculous because it focused far more on creating a made-up story than it did focusing on the real story. Knowing this film is based on the Warrens' case, who dealt with a young boy possessed by a demon, we even heard the real audio at the end of the film, where the demon then moved to another host close to the family and used that host to commit murder. They then tried to argue in the young man's legal defense that it was not his actions. They got that part nailed, and I honestly was expecting for them to go in a similar direction to The Exorcism of Emily Rose, where the film would be about the Warrens trying to prove the existence of the paranormal in open court. There's a lot you can do with a story like that. You can have eyewitnesses, you can have the Warrens use their own documentation, which they have for all their cases, as proof. You can call on people who have worked with the Warrens to share their stories, and in those moments depict those stories. There were just a lot of avenues in fiction that they could take that would have at least felt rooted in reality. I mean, the fact at the end of the film, an entire prison is witnessing this guy suspended in midair as his body breaks and glass shatters, and yet I don't think any of them testified in open court what they saw, because that would have been some hard evidence. Instead, the film went in the direction of a female Satanist leaving satanic totems around random people, I assume in exchange for power. We're not actually made clear what her motives are. The story is so over the top and honestly not at all believable, just like The Nun. First, the film overly mentions the Annabelle doll in an attempt to remind us this is a universe, and it didn't need to. It's the Conjuring universe, not the Annabelle universe. Just let that fucking doll die. A glimpse of the doll in the background was all we needed. The parent family sending get well flowers to Ed was a beautiful subtle touch connecting films, but this film decided to intertwine a fictional story in the universe with a real one, and I got pissed. Our useless priest suggests the Warrens seek out a retired priest to study the Ram disciples from the Annabelle film and other occult groups to help on their quest for this killer Satanist. To be honest, I was quite surprised they created a new priest instead of at least using Father Perez, who was involved with the Annabelle doll in Annabelle and mentions it in The Curse of La Llorona. While I don't agree with this plot point, using him would have been smarter, but doesn't allow for the following events. The only film in this universe to accurately portray the Annabelle doll case is the opening scene in The Conjuring. All the Annabelle films have been works of fiction and pretty far removed from the actual case. So as I said, bringing the fictional story of Annabelle into the real events of The Conjuring pissed me off and put this film further down the path of we don't plan on appearing realistic. The film actually has little to do with a demon at all. While a demon is doing bad things, it's doing so under the instruction of a Satanist, a 49-year-old Satanist who looks older than her father and dresses like Wednesday Addams. This Satanist has supernatural powers, she can teleport, she has telepathy, and at this point I'm just rolling my eyes. It's not unusual in this world for demons to take many forms, but usually keep one singular appearance for specific victims. There is at least one common appearance for this demon, but its form has no meaning or connection to the people it torments. It's just a nondescript, creepy face. In the Conjuring universe, demons take the form of something specific to their victim, something that is going to terrorize that specific person, and that wasn't the case in this film. In The Conjuring, we had Bathsheba. In The Conjuring 2, Valak, whose nun form they'd contradicted and fucked up in The Nun. In this film, the demon is kind of just a background character brushed aside for some supernatural human who I can't make heads or tails of. She is enacting a curse, a very specific one that in hindsight makes no sense. She enacts a curse that requires 3 victims to be killed to complete it. A child, a lover, and a man of God. One sacrifice must be by murder and the other by suicide. Well, that sounds creepy, but none of that adds up. A child is possessed, but how'd she know a child would be possessed? She put a totem under an unoccupied house in a nondescript room. A family moved in and any person could have gone to that room, or no one could have moved in. That makes no sense. The child's sister's boyfriend offers himself to the demon to spare the boy, so that's the lover, but hang on. Now the kid isn't dead, nor has he killed anyone, so that means the first part of your curse didn't get done. Also, how can you know Arnie would offer himself? That's a big coincidence, but the coincidences continue. The Satanist has pictures of her victims. I have no idea how she was even able to know who they were, let alone how she got freaking pictures of them. Then, by some miracle, or not, the holy man is Ed, because by luck a holy man or devoted man came into the picture. What would she have done if that hadn't happened? Hang on, she murdered her father, who was a holy man. So does that count as part of the curse requirements? If not, why not target him in the first place? But now I'm more confused because the story tells us sometime earlier a young girl came into contact with a totem while at college, came home, was possessed, killed her friend, potentially lover based on how they looked at each other, and then accidentally ran off a cliff. Does that fall under the lover and suicide part? If so, don't need Arnie, but you still need a kid, and you didn't get that. In the end, Demon doesn't apparently get what it wants and kills her, and shockingly, Ed in the Rain, 2 God-fearing people let it happen, which I don't buy. I'm saying this all because I'm trying to figure out how any of this makes sense, and it just doesn't. The story is so twisted around on itself, it's hard to find any sense in it. The demon at the end of the movie just takes the form of our Satanist Isla and kills her because it didn't get a completed curse. But hang on, 3 people died. 1 was murder, 1 was suicide. You needed 3 people dead. By that maths, doesn't that mean the curse was complete and the demon was just being picky? Also, I'm surprised this long-standing demon worshipper even had a soul for the demon to take. I mean, she had supernatural powers, big ones. I assume she didn't get them as a free gift with purchase. I figure she sold her soul to get them. At the start of the film, I was thinking Isla was the form the demon would take in this film, but nope, it took the form of some long-haired, creepy, womanish figure. It was the body of a very dead fat man, which made semi-sense the first time it was used. Didn't make sense the second. The fact we didn't really have a central entity or form to be terrified of made it less impactful. It also felt like there was no evil entity. I mean, in hindsight, it didn't do that much. It had an impressive opening and then that was it. Isla is the central villain, and she isn't scary because once you find out she's human, her intimidating presence is gone, and the fact she really doesn't speak and just lights matches repeatedly means that even when she does commit murder, I just felt very meh about the whole thing. The saving graces, of course, are Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson reprising their role as Ed and Lorraine Warren. They have these 2 nailed perfectly. Their performances are so strong that they bounce off each other so well to a point where they give these amazing non-verbal performances. They are able to look at each other and say so much with their faces or body language, and I was loving how well these 2 play off each other. Watching them just be together, whether it's loving each other or exercising demons, it's just an absolute delight to watch them. But honestly, I felt they weren't given enough to do in this film, or there were times that they were depicted in a way that was out of character for them. At the start of the film, they weren't giving the best exorcism, and the events of the film would indicate they didn't do a thorough investigation prior to the opening of the film, which again doesn't sound like them. They were working with a lot of useless priests, and while we got to see Lorraine showing off her talents a bit more, they took it too far by taking something hinted at in The Conjuring and amplified it in this film. They basically turned Lorraine into some telepath like Isla to save Ed, which was kinda nuts. Lorraine is a clairvoyant and light trance medium. That is all. Stop trying to make these normal people into superhumans. It's not needed. On top of that, if I go back to the beginning where we need Ed to come out of a temporary coma to tell Lorraine Arnie is possessed, that was stupid. Because Lorraine was like 3 steps away from Arnie while he was screaming, "He's just a little boy, take me instead of him." She'd have to be deaf to not hear that interaction and know what it meant, but I guess that was the case. It was good to see Sterling Jarron's return as Judy Warren. I don't actually know how much real life Judy had in her parents' career as she grew up, but for the sake of the universe, since they have decided to make her gifted like her mother in these films, unlike in reality, they certainly opened the door for her to join her parents on cases now that she's older, or lead the spin-offs. It was nice to see Shannon Cook reprise his role as Drew. I like knowing they have this confidant who works with them who was involved in their cases, but he was underused in this film to the point he almost didn't need to be there, which was a shame. Ultimately, the directing, the cinematography, score and performances are all terrific, 10s across the board, but apart from the opening of the film, the script is just a convoluted mess that, while I appreciate its darker tone, made such little sense and was so far removed from reality and the events of the case that it didn't even feel like a Conjuring film and just felt like one of its poor spin-offs. I still hope they make another Conjuring film and find a way to integrate the realism of the first two and the darkness of the third to create a beautiful, horrific monster. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Not the best entry in the universe, not the worst either. It's at the very least tolerable. I'd say it's still worth checking out and deciding for yourself what you think about it. I think if Michael Chavez was to trust his own talent more and they allowed him to do another film in the Conjuring universe, I think he does great. I think his directing is actually really good. But I think that it should be accompanied by the Hayes twins. I think that if you're going to do another film in the universe, you need the Hayes twins to be behind the script because they worked on the script for The Conjuring and The Conjuring 2, and those films were brilliant. And they didn't work on the script with this one, and if they had, I feel like it might have been much better because they obviously know what they're doing and they know exactly what needs to be in there, and we need that back. So maybe next time you can have, if James Wan is still too busy being an amazing director that he is and he can't do another film in the Conjuring universe, hire Michael Chavez and just get the Hayes twins to write it. Please, because they actually do really good work in this series. Michael Chavez, he has some really good horror techniques, and I would like to see him do more horror films. I'd say one of his favorite things is a long build up to a jump scare followed by misdirection. He did that a lot in The Curse of La Llorona, and he did it in this film as well. The only problem where he's not getting it right on the mark is he's building it up for too long. There is actually a cutoff point. You can have jump scares that are too quick, and you can have jump scares that come up too late after the fact. He's kind of gone in the opposite direction. I love some of my favorite jump scares, for example, in Bang Up Di Satan, and I've said this a million times. If you build it up enough, you can get the viewer questioning whether or not there is actually going to be a jump scare. And sometimes they psych you out and there isn't actually one. And that's equally as great because you're like, you know, you got the heart racing and you're like, damn it, I was all worked up for nothing. And it's like, where does the adrenaline go now? But then there are moments where they build it up, and then the person will move and whatever's going to make you jump is going to be behind them. Typically it's something like someone looks under a bed and they very slowly creep towards the bed and then slowly look under the bed and then there's nothing there. But then when they pull back up, whatever it is behind them. It's that kind of a type of a jump scare that I'm talking about. The problem is that he leads up to that moment and he takes way too long. We move past the point where we're questioning if or when there will be a jump scare to the point we now know there is going to be a jump scare, and we know it's not going to be where the camera is pointed, it's going to be in one of these 2 or 3 locations. So we're now able to overly analyze this moment and prepare for it. So when it does happen, it's not effective. And that's a big problem. It happened a few times in this movie, and one of the dumbest times that it happens is he's mopping in the prison and he accidentally knocks a bucket and it rolls under the bed. there you go, there's that bed thing again. And he looks under the bed and he sees where the bucket is, and his brain goes, I'm going to crawl under the bed to get the bucket. Except the bucket was on the other side of a single bed. He literally only had to get up and walk around to the other side and pick it up. But no, they had to do it this way because they wanted you to see the bucket be pulled into utter blackness and then try to build up that scene. And it didn't, it didn't work. It was a disappointing scene, but mostly I was just like, dude, just walk around and go pick it the fuck up. Just little things like that. So Michael has the technique. He's got it. He knows what to do. He's just not, in my, novice opinion, like, what the fuck would I know about directing movies? As a fan, he's got the technique. He knows how to do it. He's just not 100% executing it. That's the only issue. But I think once he can fine-tune those little things, he'll be making horror movie magic and I'll be cheering him on all the way. So I would actually like to see him not only do another film in the Conjuring universe with the Hayes twins writing, but I would like to see him do another horror film because I think he's getting there. He's getting there. But that script, oof. Not the worst one, but damn. Because you see, with the beginning, really well written, really well, and he filmed it all perfectly. It was great. What changed? Where did we go? But anyway, that is it for this video. If you have seen the latest installment in the Conjuring universe, please comment down below, share your thoughts on it. I would love to hear from you. Tomorrow I will be sharing my ranking of the Conjuring films. I know I don't usually do open franchises, but I'm pretty eager to do this one, and if you are watching this after the fact, then links will already be up here and at the end of the video, so you can just hop on over and see where I put this film amongst the other films in the universe. But that's it for this video. I hope everybody is staying safe, stay well, watch lots of movies, and I hope to see you on my next one. And until then,